Listen, I don't condone violence. I don't condone it. But sometimes you got to wake up and choose it. So, growing up, I was and am still, but I was a very old soul. And I was that way because my sister, Gina, who some of you may or may not know from the other show, Scrubs and Stage Lights, she and I were very close growing up. And so, because of that, her being 7 years older than me, I kind of grew up in an environment where I kind of knew how to act around she and her friends. And so a lot of times when I would hang out with her, people would forget that I wasn't, 19, that I wasn't 20. I was actually a really tall 13-year-old that could kind of fit in. And so there were times where she would actually not even be weirded out about taking me with her to places with her friends because I was really good at fitting in. But of course, everybody knew that I was the kid's sister. And so everything was very copacetic, very appropriate. I was always really excited that I got to hang out with my big sister and her friends. And of course, when you're hanging out with your big sister and her friends, you end up inadvertently hanging out with your big sister and her friends and their boyfriends, right? I wonder now if my parents didn't mind sending me into those situations because they knew that if I saw anything squirrely going on, I was probably going to snitch. But for the most part, I was just, I would hang out. Well, there was this one friend that my sister had that had this boyfriend that I just was not fond of. I just didn't like him. He seemed obnoxious. Like if we were all sitting in a room, I felt like I was older than him, even though he was older than me. But he annoyed me to no end. You hear me? Like every time he opened his mouth, every time he would say something, he was that guy where I would kind of like look at my sister's friend and be like, when are you going to end this and make everybody's life so much better, including your own? Like I was that 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid. And so, everybody just kind of tolerated this guy that they would kind of roll their eyes at whatever he would say and they would keep it copacetic. They would keep it moving. Nobody really cared. But I just I would look at him and just think of different ways. Now, granted, I'm 14 years old, and I would look at him and think of different ways that I could get rid of him. Like I was legit parent trap planning in my head. Like, how could I set this joint up so that by the time, Valentine's Day rolls around or something, we don't have to deal with you anymore. Like that was the disdain I had for this guy. And I promise you that probably at the time, don't know him now, but probably then you all would be like, no, let's figure out how to get rid of this guy. So, we kept it moving or whatever. I didn't really say much. I knew where my place was. I was still this young teenage kid hanging out with these older people. And one of the reasons why is because I didn't make any waves and I was older in my thinking. So you don't want to mess up, right? Don't give the horse in the mouth, right? Is what they say. Well, he was the only person that kept referring to the fact that I was as young as I was, like, this 13-year-old this, 13-year-old that, or whatever. And he would try to treat me like his kid sister, which I don't even know if he had a kid sister, but he was being the stereotypical big brother in a sitcom kind of guy. And I was not the typical teenager. So every little moment that he would try to have with me as like you're the kid sister, like it would deeply annoyed, like the very annoyance down to my soul. You understand? So I would tell him all the time, leave me alone. Like, leave me alone. It was very clear. I was very clear. Leave me alone. Right. And he would kind of like tease or whatever, you're the kid's sister. You're everybody's little sister, whatever. And I'm just like, no, I'm just her little sister, not yours. Leave me alone. Time passes. And one particular day, we all are at church. We all go to the same church and we're all standing around this circle. And, everybody's talking or whatever. And he decides he's going to be my annoying big brother that day. Right. So he takes his fingers and he starts poking. Right. He starts poking into my shoulder, my little deltoid there. Right. He just starts poking there. And he's poking. And I turn to him and I'm just like, chill out. Okay. Stop. And he's like, oh, little sister doesn't like being poked, right? Little sister doesn't like being poked. And I was just like, yo, like for real though, like stop. Like, that annoys me. I don't like when people tap me. Like, that's probably a different story time with Danita, but just telling you, if you meet me in real life, like, don't tap me. Don't tap me. I can't do that. Like, I even tell my children, don't tap. If you want my attention, just say my name and then we'll go from there because I'm going to hear you. But this guy, no, he's just tap. Just, and he was doing it just like this, y'all. This is what he was doing, just like this. And I began to get really annoyed because my first thing is like, I said no. I told you to stop and you didn't stop. I told you I didn't like being tapped and you're doing it anyway. So unfortunately for him, he had on a tie. And so when he's poking me this, what he didn't see is that while he's poking me like this, because he was concentrating on my shoulder, I slowly was going up the front of his shirt, not inside the shirt, but like on top of his shirt. He didn't see my hand. And I grabbed the little piece. Help me out here, guys, in the comment section. I don't know what it's called, but like the little tie behind the big part of the tie. Y'all know what I mean? I grabbed that because it was a little longer than it should be, because clearly he didn't know how to tie ties, or maybe he did. I don't know. I don't tie ties. And I grabbed that piece and I began to slowly wrap it around my hand. I was just kind of like doing that, Now, for those of you that do tie ties or don't, you have to know that little strip in the back actually helps tighten the tie, which I did know because I would watch my father tie ties all the time. So as I'm slowly wrapping that piece around my hand, it's tightening around his neck. So, he goes from this to kind of like stopping for a second, and then he realizes that he is starting to have his airway cut off. Now, in the meantime, we're still standing in like this very social circles, and the girls are like kiki, caw, chit chat all the live long day, right? And in the meantime, they don't realize that I have my hand securely fastened with the little part of the tie just kind of wrapped around, and I'm just holding it. Well, by this time, he is coughing and sputtering, and he can't get breath in, and I am not even looking, y'all. I'm looking away, and I'm looking around the hallway, and people in the circle, because of his personality, thought that he was being over dramatic about something. And that was the part that worked in my favor. So he's still sputtering or whatever. He cannot get air because as he continues to struggle, I keep pulling because, come on now, don't throw the shade. I was still making, 13, 14-year-old decisions in a group of 20-something-year-olds. And so finally, my sister kind of turns her head because maybe the medical person in her, she was pre-med at the time, was just like, that cough sounds like someone's in distress. And she turns and she looks. He's at this point like the color in his face is changing. She realizes what I'm doing. She comes over to me and she grabs me. She's like, hey, okay, no, we're not going to do this. Stop. And she starts to peel my hand because I'm not budging. And to her, I'm just like, I told him to leave me alone. And she was like, I know. And he knows now that to leave you alone or whatever. So she peels my hand back. I let go. He's pulling at his tie, getting it off. And of course he backs away. And then he never messed with me again, ever. So, that was one of those mornings where we all wake up and we make choices. And that morning I woke up and chose violence. Like, seriously though, no means no. Like, that's the moral. I don't know. You tell me, figure it out. I don't know. And to the individual that may be watching this, cause he is very alive and well, and we don't run in the same social circles. I would do it again. Story time with Danita. Leave a comment. See y'all next time.